Hi, I'm Meghan Raveis, Managing Director of the William Raveis Charitable Fund. We are here today with Dr. Vinod Balachandran of Memorial Sloan Kettering. Welcome, Dr. Vinod. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here.
Tell us a little bit about your medical specialty.
So I'm a surgeon. I work at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and I take care of patients with pancreas cancer. And I run a research laboratory where we're trying to find new ways to use the immune system to fight pancreas cancer.
And what was it specifically that got you into that specialty? Is there one specific point that really sparked your interest?
Well, pancreas cancer remains one of our biggest challenges with respect to cancer in 2019. In a few years, by 2025, will become the second leading cause of cancer-related death in all of the United States. And all of our current treatments for pancreas cancer still are not very effective. At 5 years after diagnosis, 93% of all pancreas cancer patients die despite our best treatments of surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. So we really need something new and something better, and that was a big motivation for me to enter this field.
What makes your research unique?
So pancreas cancer, like I mentioned, with our current treatments, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and even modern immunotherapies, all of these treatments are not very effective. And 93% of all patients with pancreas cancer will die after 5 years of diagnosis. But not everyone with pancreas cancer dies. And there's this really rare subpopulation of patients. There are about 7% of all patients with pancreas cancer that get the same treatments as everybody else, but they live for very long periods of time. And some of them are actually cured. And for a long time, people have wondered about what is really different about these patients, but nobody really knew. So when I started off my research program, this was the area that I wanted to focus on, about what's really different about these patients, and can we study them very closely and use that information that we get from studying them to then develop new treatments. So I think that is an important distinction of how we are approaching the question. It's really trying to find what these patients are telling us, what's different about them, and then using that to develop treatments.
Now, Damon Runyon only funds the boldest and the brightest with the most daring ideas. Why do you think your research was chosen by Damon Runyon?
So I think there has been in the field some skepticism as to whether you can actually treat pancreas cancer effectively with either immune therapies or other therapies. So I think that has requires some organizations like yourself, like David Runyon, to really be bold, to be able to fund what some may consider to be high-risk projects. So I think that really is one of the reasons why we were very when we were applying for funding opportunities, we looked to the Damon Runyon because we knew they were willing to take on these high-risk projects that perhaps other funders may not. And the other point I would make is, most people for many years have really felt that pancreas cancer cannot be treated with immune therapy. And we are hoping to change that perception, and which also requires, I think, going a little bit against the grain, which is what Damon Runyon does.
What kind of impact do you hope your research will have on the future for pancreatic cancer?
So I think I hope that our research will the first thing was really just stimulate people to more researchers and more investigators and clinicians to study pancreas cancer. I think we're coming to a point where there's really an urgent need for this, and we just need more people to be able to keep studying this and keep learning. It's going to be a long battle for this, and we need as many people on our team as we can get. So I think that's one major goal of our program, is to stimulate further research in pancreas cancer. And the second is specifically to stimulate research with respect to how the immune system interacts with pancreas cancer. We believe that that could be an important component of future treatments for pancreas cancer, would be an immune-based therapy. And I think that requires, at this point, we're still sort of in the early phases of studying this. So we believe that immune therapy will be an important component for future treatments for pancreas cancer. And we're really in the early stages of learning and developing these. So it's really high-risk, high-reward projects. But I think for pancreas cancer, this is critical that we need this. And we need more funding to support this. And we also need more investigators to take on this mantle.
Can you tell us about your new clinical trial and what you hope to accomplish with that?
So our new clinical trial is one of the first clinical trials that will test this concept of a personalized immune-based vaccine approach for pancreas cancer patients. This type of clinical trial has not been done in early-stage pancreas cancer patients. So I think the one major output of this will be that we are bringing a very new, innovative technology, innovative treatment to a disease which historically most drug companies and investigators have not been willing to test new drugs in, like pancreas cancer. So I think that by itself is an important output of this, is an important, that's something that comes out of our clinical trial. And the second thing is I think we will learn a lot of important things about how to use immune-based therapies to treat pancreas cancer patients. So we hope that both of these things will give us important information that we will then use to build on in the future, in future clinical trials for pancreas cancer and potentially for other cancer types as well.
And when you say personalized, is that for every specific patient?
Yes. So there have been other vaccine trials in pancreas cancer and other cancers where patients get vaccinations of tumor vaccinations to be able to stimulate the immune system to recognize the cancer. The difference between what was done before and what's now is that before it was sort of an off-the-shelf vaccine, meaning everybody got the same vaccine. And what we're learning now is that what the immune system recognizes in cancers is very personalized. So how the immune system recognizes cancer A in patient A is very different than how the immune system recognizes cancer B in patient B. So it really requires a personalized approach, meaning everybody gets their own vaccine, not everybody gets the same vaccine. And that has not been tested in pancreas cancer. And it's actually it hasn't really quite been tested in most cancer types. It's a very new scientific concept and new scientific clinical application. So we are very excited that we're now testing this in pancreas cancer. We think it will be very important in learning more foundations on how to treat pancreas cancer with immune therapy.
What is your approach as a physician scientist?
So I went into, I was inspired to do this really because I had exceptional mentors. Jed Wolchuk, who is one of the, has been really a pioneer in immunotherapy and is an integral part of Daily Runyon, and Ronald DiMatteo, who was a surgeon scientist, who was one of my great mentors. And what inspired me about them was that both of them were phenomenal doctors, phenomenal clinicians, and they, at the same time, they understood that they could make really broad changes in patients, not just at the individual level, which they do in the clinic and in the operating room, but they could affect a lot of people by making important discoveries and important trials and taking important medications to patients. So, I was really fortunate to be around them and sort of tag along when they're doing their thing, and I was really inspired by this. It was like, wow, they're not only great doctors, they can connect with patients, but at the same time they see the bigger picture as to how can they make the biggest change for so many patients, and they did that through research, and that really inspired me. It was something that I saw that I was like, I want to do that, and I hope to be like them one day. And so I try to use that approach of trying to learn from patients and using what I learned from patients to then study that in the laboratory. I think that connection is really important to ask the questions in the laboratory that are really relevant for the progress that we need right now. So I try to do that.
How does your clinical experience with your patients affect your research?
My interaction with my patients is my single most strongest inspiration. We take care of patients who are often told of what most people think of as one of the worst cancer diagnoses you can get. And patients and their families are really in probably the worst time in their life. But to see how they fight through this and their fight in their battle against cancer is, I think, one of the most inspirational things that I see on a day-to-day basis, and I feel very privileged to have that opportunity to stand beside them and fight along with them. And it makes my problem, so to speak, much more trivial and puts things into perspective for me, and it just drives me harder to keep going.
How important is the support from Damon Runyon and the William Raveis Charitable Fund to your career?
It's been incredibly important for early stage investigators who really want to ask out of the box questions and take on high risk projects, which is really what we need for particularly a disease like pancreas cancer. Just if you think about it, over the past 50 years, we have invested so much research and dollars into pancreas cancer investigation, but we still haven't made as much progress as we would have liked. So I think that speaks to you need to try different things. You need to have different approaches because the other approaches haven't really given us the progress that we would really like. So, and that requires organizations like the William Raveis Foundation and David Runyon who are really willing to take on these high-risk projects that perhaps other people would not. And so for me personally, it has been incredible. The work that we're doing would not be possible without the support from you and the Daily Runyon.
Dr. Vinod, you have young children. What do you tell them that you're going to do every day when you leave for work?
So I tell them that I go to take care of patients who have cancer. And it's a little bit difficult to explain the concept of cancer to a 5-year-old. So the way I've told them is we take bugs out of people because that's something they can understand. Now my older son is a little bit older, so he asks more poignant questions and more pointed questions about what do you mean, how did they get in there, and things like that. So now I've gotten into telling him a little bit more about how cancer is really it's a fundamentally different problem for human health. It's our bodies turning against ourselves, and so that is really why the solution is so difficult, because we're really fighting against our own bodies, our own selves, and which increases the complexity of this. So, but I try to impart on them that this is what I like to do. I feel very fulfilled and very blessed to have this opportunity to do this every day, and that's one of the great things about going to work when you don't feel like it's work, because you really feel like this is something that you enjoy doing and you really feel motivated to do. So I hope they will have that one day as well.
How do you think your research is impacting your children's generation?
I think pancreas cancer for both my generation and the generation before me has been about the same level of fear associated with it being one of the worst cancers that we still don't have a effective treatment. And I am very hopeful that we will see much more effective treatments in my lifetime, and potentially even a cure. And this, I think oncologists and doctors sometimes are a little bit hesitant to use the cure word, because it is, comes with a lot of expectation. But I feel like that's what we have to aim for. And sure, we may not achieve it, but at least not in my lifetime. But we have to strive for it. And hopefully, even if we don't get there, our children will get there, and we will hopefully one day eradicate this from the face of this planet.
Dr. Vinod, thank you very much for joining us today. We are honored to be supporting you, and we are humbled to be involved in your research. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for having us here, and thanks for supporting our research. Thanks for taking a chance on our ideas. I think we really need organizations like yourself and Daily Runyon to really support us to drive the field forward to make the change.